I never imagined I'd inherit anything, let alone 1,000 acres of prime land. When my mom passed years ago, I thought that was the end of my little family tree. I had no grandparents left, no close relatives. Or so I thought. Then one random Tuesday, a sharply dressed attorney named Mr. Carlyle tracked me down at my apartment. "Are you Alexander Reed?" he asked. "Depends on who's asking," I joked, assuming it was another bill collector. He smiled. "I represent your late great-uncle, Samuel Reed. You are the sole heir to his estate." My jaw nearly hit the floor. Within a week, I was standing in a massive, oak-paneled law office staring at documents that changed my life. My great-uncle, who I vaguely remembered as the quiet man who always smelled like sawdust, had owned property. Not a little home or a hunting cabin. No, he owned 1,024 acres of prime rural land, once used as farmland and timber. I thought that alone was unreal. But then the lawyer showed me something more interesting, a map. And on that map sat something unexpected. An entire suburban neighborhood had been built across one corner of the land. Rows of cookie-cutter houses. A clubhouse. Parks. Walking trails. A sparkling, HOA-maintained community named Silver Ridge Estates. "I don't understand," I said. "How can there be a neighborhood there if he owned the land?" "The Silver Ridge Homeowners Association leased the land 30 years ago," Carlyle explained. "And that lease expired 2 weeks ago, unrenewed. Meaning, the land and everything on it was now legally mine." I sat back, letting that sink in. I wasn't just a landowner. I was now the landlord of an entire subdivision, and they had no idea. "Do they know the lease ended?" I asked. Carlyle adjusted his glasses. "Not yet. They were notified twice, but the HOA president refused the notices and sent them back marked, incorrect address. It appears he didn't want residents to know." Oh, that man would soon regret that power move. My first visit. I loaded up my old pickup and drove out to Silver Ridge Estates, curiosity bubbling inside me. The entrance had a stone monument sign, perfectly manicured flowers, and a banner saying, "Welcome to the most exclusive living in the county." I smirked. Exclusive? Sure. As I drove in, I noticed a few residents walking tiny dogs, neighbors trimming hedges, kids chalking on the sidewalks. It looked peaceful. Almost too perfect. Then I saw her. A woman in khaki capris, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard. She zeroed in on me like a hawk spotting prey. She marched right up to the driver's side before I even stopped. "No overnight parking on the street," she snapped. "And this community requires HOA-approved vehicles only. That thing would not qualify." She pointed at my truck. I stared at her, amused. "I'm not even parked yet." She ignored that. "Purpose of visit?" "Just checking out the area," I said casually. She raised an eyebrow. "Are you with a construction company? Surveyors? Realtors?" "Nope. Just looking around." She adjusted her glasses, like she couldn't believe someone like me was breathing her exclusive air. Then came the line that told me everything I needed to know. "People like you need to check in at the HOA office before entering. We don't allow unverified guests." "People like me?" I held back a laugh. "And who are you?" She puffed her chest. "Martha Kensington, HOA president." Of course her name was Martha. She scribbled furiously on her clipboard. "You're already violating 3 rules by driving aimlessly, causing a disturbance, and having improper vehicle aesthetics." "Improper vehicle aesthetics?" I repeated, stunned. She nodded aggressively. "This is a luxury community. We maintain standards." I bit my tongue, reminding myself. I own the ground her luxury stands on. Pushed too far. She then snapped a photo of my license plate. "That's enough," I said, stepping out. "I don't need any trouble." "You're already in trouble," she sneered. "Any further nonsense, and I'll call security." Security? In a neighborhood built on land they didn't own. Oh, that was rich. Before I could respond, a security golf cart rolled up. The officer, a middle-aged guy who seemed tired of his job, asked Martha what was wrong. "He refuses to provide credentials," she huffed. "And his truck is an eyesore." The officer sighed. Sir, can I just get your name? Alex. Alex what? I think that's all you need for now. Martha scribbled more notes. We'll be issuing fines. I smiled widely. Good. Send them all to Alexander Reed, legal and sole owner of Silver Ridge Acreage. The land your houses are built on. The pen stopped mid-stroke. The officer blinked. Then Martha laughed. Hard. Oh, is that your delusion of the week? She mocked. We own this community. You're trespassing. Technically, everyone here was trespassing. But I wasn't revealing everything, not yet. Look, I said calmly, I'll let my lawyer explain it soon enough. Martha waved me off like I was a pesky insect. Lawyers? Please. We built this place. We run it. You drive that farm truck back to wherever you came from. The officer shrugged helplessly. Have a nice day, Martha, I said, climbing back into my truck. She shouted after me, I will be sending violations. And that's when it hit me. They had absolutely no idea what was coming. This wasn't going to be a simple conversation with the HOA board. This was going to be war. And I suddenly couldn't wait. I gave the HOA a chance. I drove home after that first visit thinking maybe Martha was just having a bad day, or 20 bad years. Maybe once the official paperwork arrived, things would smooth out. Maybe the community wasn't as toxic as its queen. But the next morning, my mailbox destroyed that fantasy. Inside were 3 envelopes, all bright orange with a Silver Ridge logo. Violation number 001. Unregistered vehicle spotted in community. Violation number 002. Suspicious behavior. Violation number 003. Entering neighborhood without approval. I laughed. Out loud. They had actually fined the owner of the land for walking on his own property. The best part? Each notice demanded a fine of $250 and stated, failure to pay will result in legal action. Legal action against me. On land that I controlled. I pinned the notices to my fridge like a trophy collection. The harassment begins. Over the next week, things escalated. Fast. Every time I drove out to inspect the land, Martha would materialize like a demon summoned by internalized rage. Your tires left dirt on the road, she barked once. It's a clean community. Another time. You cannot park there. That shoulder belongs to us. No, I corrected. It belongs to me. She pretended not to hear. Then came the third encounter, when they really crossed the line. I parked near the community pool to check boundary markers. Within minutes, a tow truck pulled up beside my truck. The driver said the HOA ordered the tow. I'd rethink that, I warned. You touch that truck, you'll be trespassing on private land. Lady said it's HOA land, he shrugged. I pulled out legal documents showing my ownership. His eyes widened. Sorry, man. I'm out. He left immediately, smart guy. Martha stormed toward me, furious. You think you can wave some fake papers and boss people around? She screeched. They're real, I smiled. You'll be seeing more of them soon. She got right in my face. We own this neighborhood. We decide what happens here. You will never have any authority. Oh, Martha, you really should have checked the paperwork before declaring war. They thought I was bluffing. That night I met with my lawyer, Carlisle. They're digging themselves deep, he said, reviewing the HOA charter. They've been illegally collecting dues for 2 weeks now. Everyone in that neighborhood is technically squatting. Can I evict them? I asked. Absolutely, he nodded. But we'll start with a simple truth bomb first. He drafted a notice titled, Immediate Land Ownership Transfer Notice. Lease expired. All rights returned to heir. We sent copies to heavy checkmark every resident. Heavy checkmark the HOA board. Heavy checkmark county property records. Heavy checkmark their mortgage lenders. Heavy checkmark and city zoning officials. The reaction? Denial. Complete denial. Residents complained in their Facebook community group that some clown is pretending to own the place. Martha declared it a scam and instructed them to ignore the notices. Even worse, they doubled the fines against me. One letter read, Your presence is lowering property values. Pay $1,200 by Friday. I nearly framed that one. The nerve. What triggered me wasn't the fines, though. It was the arrogance. One afternoon, I walked along my wooded acreage behind the neighborhood, far from any house, marking trees for conservation work. I was minding my business when suddenly a sharp whistle cut through the air. A security guard rolled up in his golf cart. "You can't cut down trees without HOA permission," he said. "These are my trees," I replied. He crossed his arms. "Everything you see belongs to Silver Ridge." "That's funny," I said slowly. "Because according to the county, everything you see belongs to me." Martha arrived moments later, right on cue. "You again," she spat. "If you don't leave right now, I'll call the sheriff." "Please do," I smiled. "I'd love to have a conversation with everyone present." She hesitated. Something in my tone told her she wasn't ready for what was coming. The breaking point. I returned the next day to find prohibited a chain barrier blocking the dirt road. Prohibited private HOA property signs erected. Prohibited my no trespassing signs torn down. Martha had effectively tried to ban me from my own land. That was it. The line had been crossed, set on fire, and buried under HOA stupidity. I dialed my lawyer. "They want to fight?" I asked. Carlisle's voice was calm. "They just handed us the ammunition." He explained the legal plan. A full land reclamation case. Public notice of illegal occupation. Court order to shut down all HOA operations. But the best part was this. Every homeowner's mortgage lender would now be notified that their houses sit on land they do not own, which meant property values tanking, HOA power crushed, Martha's kingdom crumbling. I smiled, feeling a rush of vindication. They wanted to treat me like the enemy. Fine. I'd become their worst nightmare. And the war had only begun. The moment the paperwork was finalized, I drove straight back to Oak Ridge, this time not as a kid visiting their grandfather's land, but as the legal owner of everything under their feet. I arrived early in the morning, right when the HOA board usually gathered to review violations. As expected, my truck wasn't even fully parked before they swarmed me with clipboards in hand. It was déjà vu, 3 smug board members storming toward me like they owned the whole zip code. "Sir, you can't park here," the president snapped. Same guy from before, I mentally labeled him the rooster. Always puffed up, always crowing. Actually, I smiled. Stepping out of the truck, "I can park anywhere I want here." He rolled his eyes and shoved a stack of papers into my chest. "Violation notices. You have been warned. Your vehicle is not approved. Your clothes don't meet HOA standards. And you are trespassing." Inside my head, I was laughing so hard I almost broke character. Trespassing. On my own land. I calmly handed the papers right back. "You should probably check your county land records before handing out threats." That set him off. His face darkened. "We run this community, not outsiders. If we say you're trespassing, then you're trespassing." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice so only the board could hear. "We'll see what you say when you're paying me rent." The rooster barked a laugh, waving at the other residents who had started watching. "Rent? You must be confused. We own this land. The HOA has authority here." Their arrogance was almost entertaining. So I delivered the first blow. I inherited Oak Ridge. All of it. The houses, the clubhouse, the park, the roads, the marina, every square inch. And starting very soon, the HOA is going to answer to me. Dead silence. The rooster stuttered. "No, that's impossible." I pulled out a certified packet, the same transfer documents his HOA would be receiving soon. I let him take one long look at the embossed seal before sliding it back into my briefcase. "You see, my grandfather gave you permission to build here. A permission you abused. You bullied people. You crossed every possible line. And now I'm correcting his mistake." The crowd of neighbors grew. Whispers spread like wildfire. Someone in the back shouted, "What does this mean for us?" I turned to them. "It means the HOA's days of treating you like prisoners are over." Gasps. Cheers. People pulling out phones to record. This was the first crack in the castle walls the HOA had built around themselves. The rooster, growing desperate, puffed up again. "You can't just walk in here and take over. We'll sue you. We'll." I cut him off. "You have no legal standing to sue the rightful owner. In fact, your HOA charter expired years ago, and you never renewed it. Which means—" I let the suspense build. "You don't even exist in the eyes of the law." The board looked like they were about to faint. The crowd? They were smiling for the first time in a long time. And I was just getting started. Because next came evictions, audits, and complete HOA shutdown, and the so-called rulers of the neighborhood were about to learn what real power looked like. Once everyone saw the proof sealed, stamped, notarized, there was no going back. The HOA board members scattered like roaches when the light switch is on. And, trust me, I flipped every switch. I immediately contacted a property law firm that loved cases like this. They helped me issue formal notices. The HOA was dissolved due to lack of legal standing. All HOA bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. The clubhouse, offices, and storage were reclaimed as private property. Every resident was notified that monthly dues were canceled. Permanently. The reaction? Cheering. Applause. People hugging each other in the streets. For years, these folks were fined for having a garden hose visible, or a grass blade too tall, or a car too shiny. They lived under a dictatorship disguised as a neighborhood. But overnight, they were free. The rooster and his board, though, they weren't done squawking. They had one final move. They tried to hold a secret emergency meeting in the clubhouse to rewrite rules and restore their authority. Bad timing for them, great timing for me. I arrived with the sheriff. Remember, the HOA had been using my building without permission. Every piece of equipment inside belonged to my late grandfather's estate. The sheriff looked them dead in the eyes. "So let me get this straight. You're voting on rules for land you don't own inside a building you don't own after ignoring a lawful order to vacate?" You could feel the oxygen leave the room. They were removed, shuffling out like defeated villains in a cartoon. One even muttered, But we run this place." I couldn't help it. I smiled and said, "Not anymore." The final act. Making things right. I met with the residents and explained my plan. Heavy checkmark: each homeowner would receive full ownership of their home and the lot beneath it. Heavy checkmark: no more dues, ever. Heavy checkmark: a democratic neighborhood improvement council, voluntary, not mandatory. Heavy checkmark: everyone would finally have control over their own property. People cried, real tears of relief. One elderly neighbor told me, "Your grandfather would be so proud. He built this land for families and you saved it from tyrants." That hit hard, made all the trouble worth it. And as for the HOA bullies, let's just say the accounting review revealed thousands skimmed from community funds, illegal late fees, and shady contracts with companies they secretly owned. They didn't just lose power. They gained investigations, legal bills, and permanent public embarrassment. Not exactly the legacy they wanted. Epilogue. Now, when I walk through Oak Ridge, I see high-voltage kids playing freely, deciduous tree yards decorated however families want, automobile cars parked proudly, smiling face with smiling eyes, neighbors smiling again. This place finally feels alive. All because the land came back to the person who cared about the people, not the power. And whenever someone new moves in and asks what happened to the HOA, the locals grin and say, "Oh, they messed with the wrong landowner."